I've never really been satisfied with the Famicom port of Gradius. It's fine. It's better than anything else on the system at that point. But it's also a huge step down for the game. Gradius II fixes all of that. In fact, if we drew the line here, I'd say it easily makes the top 5 games on the Famicom list. It is an amazing game. It's also one of the hardest games on the Famicom. I've never managed to beat it fairly, and my personal best is only the 4th stage. Today as I was playing, I only managed to get to the 2nd boss, and it was a tough uphill climb to get there. To make things a little bit confusing, there are 2 different Gradius IIs. A Gradius II was developed for the MSX computer, and then after that a different Gradius II was developed for arcades. The Famicom game is a port of the arcade game. And to fit as much of the arcade game onto the Famicom as they could, Konami has busted out a new mapper. Gradius II is the debut of the VRC4 mapper. It's the chip that Konami is going to use for all of their high-end games for about the next year. The story of the game is that 2 years ago, the planet Gradius managed to defeat the invading Bacterians using a special fighter, the Vic Viper. And now the Bacterians are invading again. Yeah, that's literally the entire story. In the Famicom version, there's 6 distinct levels to the game, but don't think that it's short. Each level generally has 2 or 3 distinct environments that you have to fight through. Let's go through level 2 for an example. First you have this region where you can freely scroll up and down, a new feature in Gradius II, and you have to shoot your way through these barriers. You don't have any maneuverability, but there's tons of enemies all around you. Eventually you're locked into a straight line path, and that has these pods that reach out and grasp you. Once you're clear of those, you enter a third region where these eggs spit out some familiar looking alien beasties. If you can survive that onslaught, then you reach this mini-boss that's a giant eye, and clearing that leads you to this skull, which is the 2nd stage boss. That is a pretty long road for a Famicom shoot-'em-up. Something you might have noticed while showing off that level is how little room you have. That's a real theme in Gradius II, packing you into these tight areas with no room to maneuver. The first stage is very similar to the burning area in Salamander, complete with a series of giant flame jets that arc out. You have to face down a lot more enemies too, in much more dense patterns. Holding down the B button will fire another shot as soon as you can, and you really need to use that on some of the tougher foes. Getting close and just dumping bullets into things is how you get through the game. When you start out, you're given your choice of armaments. 4 different types of bombs, 2 different types of guns, and 2 different types of lasers. I really feel like in Gradius II that there isn't any one best choice here. Ripple's better on some stages, laser's better on others. Gradius II also lets you have a full 4 options as you play. In the Famicom port of the first Gradius game, you could only have 2 options. As you're shooting through levels, sometimes enemies will drop one of these red capsules, and that advances the power-up bar at the bottom. You hit the A button to activate whatever you're on. What I generally go for are 2 speed-ups immediately, and then hold out all the way for the force field. There's just too much going on in Gradius II for me not to get it first. One nice thing in Gradius II is that they really throw those power-up capsules at you. Of course, the game does have the usual problem with the Gradius series. Once you're killed, it's really hard to keep going. The stages are depending on you being powered up in order to clear them. I mean, look at this. How am I supposed to get through this with just the standard gun? In the first Gradius game, there was a cheat code that would power you up all the way. The first appearance of everyone's favorite Konami code. Gradius II brings back the Konami code, but it doesn't work that way anymore. Now you enter the Konami code at the title screen and it gives you 30 lives. Of course, since it's an uphill battle once you die, all you're really doing is feeding 30 lives into a meat grinder. The Gradius series will go on from here, of course, but this is the end of the line for it on the Famicom. There's also other ports of Gradius II. The PC Engine version in particular is especially good. It actually makes the game longer than the arcade version. Since shoot-em-ups are so straightforward, I'm not really going to have a whole lot to say about them, and that's really everything I've got on Gradius II. Having different weapon loadouts is neat, but I also feel like there isn't a lot of variation. If you really want me to pick out one as the best, I guess number 4, because the missiles give you an overhead attack and the ripple laser gives you a nice broad cone at the front. But you really can't go wrong with any of them. It's a beautiful game with great music, and really the only serious flaw I have is how difficult it is. I love playing the game, but it can be downright cruel sometimes. I can't say it's my favorite shoot-em-up on the Famicom, and honestly it's not even my favorite Konami shoot-em-up on the Famicom. But as of the holiday season in 1988, it's the best shoot-em-up, and it's among the best Famicom games, period.